September 2nd, 2020 marks the 75th anniversary of VJ Day, Victory over Japan, and the end of the war in the Pacific, and perhaps more significantly, the official end of World War II.
Well, the day that they surrendered, we got it right away. It came in over the radio.
It's official. It's all over. It's total victory.
Well, there was bedlam. Even now I get goosebumps. The town went crazy.
Oh, that was pandemonium, I'm telling you.
And people were kissing you and hugging you, and
there were tears,
ringing of bells.
A lot of tears, a lot of embracing.
Everybody was very excited.
It was quite an experience, and I lived it.
President Harry S. Truman announced the unconditional surrender of Japan at 7 p.m. on August 14, 1945.
The proclamation of VJ Day must await upon the formal signing of the surrender terms by Japan.
The Japanese didn't formally sign the surrender documents ending World War II until September 2nd.
Let us pray that peace be now restored to the world and that God will preserve it always.
We had hoped to be able to thank and honor our veterans of the war in the Pacific and celebrate this historic event during a Gary Sinise Foundation Soaring Valor trip to New Orleans. As I look back on the long, torturous trail when an entire world lived in fear, when democracy was on the defensive everywhere, when modern civilization trembled in the balance, I thank a merciful God that He has given us the faith, the courage, and the power from which to mold victory. Powerful words from General MacArthur as the Second World War was finally over. We've made 19 trips like these, bringing members of our greatest generation out to enjoy the National WWII Museum.
The goal of this museum is to tell the American experience in World War II.
My first initiation to combat was Iwo Jima.
This flag was on my ship during the Battle of Iwo Jima in Okinawa.
Every veteran wants to see their story.
This is you.
That's my platoon on parade. I'm in the second row there. I remember a couple of those boys in front.
Although we cannot do that now, we can still pay homage to the men and women who were there, who made a mark on history.
I was 19 years old and we didn't know what to make of Iwo Jima. It was an ugly damn place. It looked like it came straight from hell.
We did a lot of heavy fighting on Bougainville, much heavier than Guadalcanal.
These voices have been captured to pass on to future generations through the World War II Museum's commitment to oral history preservation.
Gary began to understand through his Uncle Jack how important it was to save these stories. And he called me up and said, Nick, can I help? What can I do? And I said, if you could help us support one more historian, we've got, I think, 6 at the time. That'll be another few hundred of these stories that we can capture.
America was at war. It was my job to get out there and do something.
We're a group of high school kids on board that ship. And we didn't know bombs from anything else. All of a sudden I heard a tap. The Japanese grenade was such that we'd pull a pin on ours. They would tap theirs.
The stories are powerful.
Just raining steel up and down the beach, you can just hear it. Just, you know, you can just hear it strong.
Men were dying all over the place. And those that did survive and were wounded so horribly, many of them probably wished they hadn't survived.
The wisdom, a guidepost for all to see and hear.
People tend to forget the price that we've had to pay. And I think they ought to remember it if they look to the years ahead, the price we're going to have to pay if we're going to keep this.
These oral histories are priceless, and the Gary Sinise Foundation has long supported the museum's efforts and will continue to do so.
We are to recognize these young men that give their lives for our country.
And so it is with profound respect and deep appreciation that we at the Gary Sinise Foundation salute a legacy of service and honor the promise of peace the brave, selfless men and women brought to a world at war.
A lot of guys were saying we can live again. We'll be able to have a future.
I lost friends.
A lot of pain because a lot of kids never came back.
It was a period of my life I'll never forget.
Today, please take a moment to remember that VJ Day came at an extreme cost. The wounded, the prisoners of war, and the lives of over 111,000 Americans killed or missing in action. This, in the Pacific alone, a sacrifice that should be remembered with every step of freedom we take in this great nation.
So it would seem to me that this ought to be a lesson for this generation and hopefully the next generation.
75 years ago, victory over Japan. Thank you, members of the greatest generation. You are forever remembered.
I think it taught all of us who grew up in that age and who went through all of that to be very grateful. We're living in the greatest country in the world.